Let's see if I can find the right button. Okay, how's that? Can you see that?
Yeah, we can
Yes.
see that.
Nice. If anyone does have any questions while we're going along, you can put them in the chat. I might spot it. If not, I'll look at the end. Okay. So yeah, thanks, Chris, for making the title for me because I didn't give you one. But yeah, I'm going to talk a bit about Discourse and our plugin system and module federation. Something, as Chris said earlier, we've been working on for, it's got to be like a year at this point, in various stages. The stuff I'm talking about today is in production, and as of this week is the default for Discourse. So all of this stuff is being used, and nothing catastrophic has exploded yet. So hopefully it's a decent pattern. So yeah, plan for the talk is I'll give you a bit of context on Discourse and our plugin system. I'll talk about how build systems have worked in the past for Ember and for Discourse. Talk a bit about the new world, which has been mentioned already, Vite and roll down and all that fun stuff. And then how do we actually make that new world work for Discourse's plugin ecosystem? So background on Discourse. We're a 100% free open source community platform. We power over 22,000 communities worldwide. If you haven't heard of our name, you probably still have used Discourse, but it's normally white labeled. So it's fully branded for whoever is using it. And of course, we have the Ember.js forum, which is the most important one. Discourse is powered by Ruby on Rails and Ember on the front end, as you would expect. And yeah, we have a very extensive ecosystem of plugins and themes. I say plugins and themes for the purpose of this talk. We can think of them as the same thing. So I'm just going to call them plugins for today. So yeah, the plugin system. Discourse plugins can include as much JavaScript as they like. They write their JavaScript just like we do in Discourse core and like you do in your Ember apps. You can make Ember routes, you can make Ember controllers, components, whatever you like. Plugins can, in those JavaScript files, import modules from Ember. They can import modules from Discourse core. And the real kicker for this talk is they can import modules from other plugins. So we have this crazy interrelationships between all of these different things. And then the thing that also makes it challenging is we want to be able to build all of these plugins independently. So we want to do a build for Discourse core. We want to do a build for each plugin. And then at runtime, depending on user preferences, site preferences, we want to be able to combine those things at runtime. So we have all these different bundles that are built, and then we stick them together. So yeah, making that work is a challenge. So how did it work in the past? You may have heard the phrase AMD. It means asynchronous module definitions. This code example is what you might write in your source file. If you've ever done a view source on older Ember apps, you will have seen something like this, a defined statement. And what it's doing is it's taking your code and it's wrapping it up. It's saying, okay, this is the module name. These are the things that it needs, its dependencies. And then this is the actual module content in here. And this is what Ember CLI did. It's what Webpack does in a similar way. And yeah, this is how it's worked for a very long time. So that's one module. You have lots of files in your app. It gets complicated very quickly. So yeah, obviously don't try and read those. Just an example of like how crazy the files can get. And so we'd end up with these built bundles for each of our plugins and for Discourse core and for Ember. And we would load all these JavaScript files with all their defined statements. We just load them one by one. It's fine. And they can all see each other. Because then when we finally do require Discourse app. It goes in and it loads the app. That then loads all its dependencies. It's all happening in the browser at runtime. So we can include whatever plugins we like. It'll work. That's the old world. Now, that world was designed before modern JavaScript modules existed. And these days, it's not great. Having all of those nested functions does have a performance cost, which is something we've run into a few times at Discourse. It's also very hard to integrate with modern browser technologies. You can't, from that system, it's very hard to integrate with modern JavaScript modules. And features of modern JavaScript modules like native async await stuff, especially top-level await, where you just have await in your JavaScript, at the top of your JavaScript files. So we really want something more modern. And that's where modern build tooling comes in. So again, this is your source code. So we've got 3 files, we've got a couple of components, we've got extremely minimal app, which I'm sure Preston will talk about. And so we have 3 source files. Now, before, each of these would just be turned into those defined statements. But with modern tooling, the build system, whether it's Vite, roll down, roll up, whatever, will look at all these imports and resolve them at build time. And it will say, okay, component 2 needs access to component 1. And what it'll do is it'll actually remove all those imports. It will generate a single file with all of the code inlined, and it's already mapped that component 1 just onto the actual class definition. So it's completely skipped. That's what we had before. And it's reduced it down to that. So it's optimizing things as much as possible. Now, the problem is the only thing that is exported for anyone else to see in the browser is your main app entry point. Anything else, so any Discourse plugin or any other JavaScript bundle cannot access component 2. It cannot access component 1. And that is a real problem for us because we need to be able to access those internal modules. So, solution. We're not the first people to have this problem. There are plenty of solutions out there. The main one is called Module Federation. I think their web address is modulefederation.io. And yeah, this is incredibly powerful stuff to link up micro front ends and component libraries and all sorts. So a lot of flexibility and a lot of developer tooling around it as well. The custom developer tools for your browser and all sorts. Sounds great. The rough idea of how it works is you have a plugin that you add to your build. You say, these are the modules I want to make available to other bundles. It produces a manifest, which tells the app how to find each module, which bundle does it belong to. And then at runtime, essentially you have this function you can call, like load module, and that will go away and it will find the correct bundle and pull it in. And when you're writing your code, you don't even have to use that function. You can just write regular imports, and at build time, it will seamlessly turn it into this kind of statement. So this sounds great. But there is a problem, and it's probably one that many of you run into, and that is Safari. It's always Safari. Safari has a very frustrating bug, which was reported in 2022. And it means that if 2 different things import a module at the same time, and that module uses top-level await, it will explode. Doesn't work. So we cannot safely use top-level await in Safari, which is kind of a deal breaker. And just to illustrate why we need to be able to import it from 2 places at the same time, Discourse is going to import all of our plugins. So we might import the chat plugin. We might import the checklist plugin. And then we have this case where plugins depend on each other. So the checklist plugin is also going to import chat. Normally that's fine. Like this is how modules are supposed to work. But if chat has that top level await, perhaps introduced by that module federation system. This doesn't work. There's two things importing it, it blows up. So that's a deal breaker. So we need something else. So just taking a step back, what do we actually need? We don't need a lot of what's in the module federation system. It has a lot of flexibility, versioning, intercompatibilities, all sorts of stuff. We don't need anything that complicated. All we need is that plugins can import modules from other plugins. We do now have this requirement where we can't have top level await. They need to be real top level imports, ES module imports. And we need to be able to build them completely independently, as I said earlier. So this is the solution we've come up with. It didn't have a name. I've now called it Module Mesh. I guess we'll see if Chris and Jarek like my name. Because I can't remember what we've been calling it. We call it I think we've just been calling it Federation, but that can get confusing with the kind of official Federation plugin. So Module Mesh. So this is a plugin for roll down, roll up, Vite, whatever, compatible with all three of those. And what we do is in our chat build, we say, okay, these are the modules that chat needs to provide to everyone else. So we say, okay, the chat plugin is going to provide a message component, a button component, and this is where you can find them in the plugin. But then what does that do? That is going to create a magic entry point on the chat plugin, which makes all of these things available, all in that one module. So if this is our chat plugin, we have a couple of components. We're exporting the message component, we're exporting the composer component, and we're also exporting a constant, a named export for good luck. So you can see what that looks like. So that's what we write. And when we run our plugin, this is what it ends up as. So again, like we saw before, it's optimized away all the imports between these two things. But what we get is this. So those two modules that we wanted to export, it has made available on these specially named exports. So you can see the special name is just the module path, and then colon, and then the name of the export. So we have a couple of default exports, and then we have that named export, the max length there. So we've now got a module in the browser. We can access all these things, great. But we don't really want to be writing ridiculously long paths like that everywhere. So we need something on the other side. So anything that is consuming these modules, we have another plugin. This one's called Consume Mesh. So we tell it, okay, anything that starts with discourse/plugin/chat needs to be mapped onto this bundle that we've made. Similarly, we do that for Ember dependencies. So Glimmer and Ember/star goes to Discourse/Ember deps bundle that we've made. So what does that do? This is another plugin, the checklist plugin. This is how we write it, as you'd expect. We just import it as normal. And then when we run our plugin, it turns the imports into this. And just to make it a bit easier, I've put the diff at the bottom here so you can see exactly what it's doing. So we've got the Glimmer component import gets turned into this special path from Ember deps, and there could be other things exported from Ember deps as well. And similarly for the plugin, that gets transformed as well. So we're pretty much there. We have the transformations on both sides. The final problem is, you may have noticed that the import just looks like this. So the browser has no idea what to do here. How does it know what Discourse plugins chat goes to? We really need that to be a full URL that could include our CDN. It might include some kind of cache busting hash, whatever. So we need to do that transformation. And we also want to be able to swap out our chat bundle without having to rebuild every other plugin. So we don't want to hard code this anywhere. Now, thankfully, browsers have a solution for this, which even works in Safari, which is import maps. So we can tell the browser, if you see an import for Discourse/plugins chat, here is the bundle you need to load. Checklist, here is the bundle you need to load. Ember Depths, here's that one. And then that's it. We can now share any module from any plugin to any other plugin, any module from Discourse Core to any plugin, very much like a mesh. There's so many different imports going all over the place, and it works. So just to recap the flow of working through it step by step, we would write something like this in the checklist plugin. The plugin on the checklist, the build plugin in the checklist build would transform it into this slightly crazy looking import from this named module. The import map changes that named module into a real URL, and then we can access the message component we were looking for. Now, I said earlier, we're using this in production, so it's been rolled out everywhere. And the good news is plugin authors didn't have to do anything. It was like 99.5% intercompatible. There were some very, very tiny changes to kind of timing of modules, but on the whole, plugin authors didn't have to do anything, which is great. This is 100% just at our build layer. So we're now using much more modern build technology and more modern browser runtime, which is faster. And our plugin ecosystem didn't have to change anything, which is great. Now, obviously, not everyone has a plugin system like us. Module federation is very useful for many things. You could have lots of small apps, but you want to share some dependency between them, so the browser isn't having to fetch Ember multiple times or some other larger dependency. Shared component libraries are another big use case. If you have lots of smaller apps and they share one component library amongst your organization, it's another way it can be used. The other cool thing is if you had a component library and say you had version 1, version 2, you could build your app once and then swap out which bundle you're using for the component library at runtime just by swapping it out in your import map. And these are things that the official module federation system supports, but it's nice that this can do it as well. So yeah, that's about it. I have pulled this concept into a kind of demo package called Module Mesh. It's not currently used in Discourse. Perhaps we will update Discourse to use this. It is essentially the same thing. I've just wrapped it up in a generic library. And there's also a demo there with a minimal Ember app and a version 1 and version 2 component library that you can swap out just by flipping a checkbox in the UI, which is pretty cool. So yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. Let me know if you have any questions.